So I'm always meeting guys that want to get into the N54 game, but they just have a certain budget that kind of restricts them. And then they always ask me what I bought my car for, and when I tell them, they're always super shocked because it's way below what most people pay for a car with my mileage, being a manual transmission. Even though it's just a black leather interior with space gray exterior, they're still pretty shocked with how low I bought my car for. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about how you can find a pristine example N54 335i for under $10,000. You can do the same thing that I did if you just follow a couple steps that I mentioned in this video. It does take a little bit of patience though, so that's a fair warning. I guess I'm going to start off with my story. It took me over 6 months to find the perfect car that I wanted. I didn't have any particular color in mind, which helped. I know I wanted a black interior, and I preferred the silver trim. It had to be manual. I didn't want to do auto. Me wanting manual narrowed down the selections quite a lot, but it took me over 6 months of searching actively on Craigslist, Auto Trader, Auto Tempest, eBay, Facebook Marketplace, cars.com, all those sort of sites. I would check almost daily, if not every other day. I found a couple good ones, but the most valuable thing that I can tell you is to never get impatient with it and pull the trigger on the wrong car. The first car I looked at was a space gray car. It was manual. It had the black leather interior with wood trim. It had downpipes already installed. It had intakes, it had an exhaust, so it had basic bolt-ons done to it already, which that should have been a red flag for me, but at that point I wasn't too familiar with the N54 or 335i's in general. What you should do is get a pre-purchase inspection, also called a PPI. I went to my local shop, Precision Dynamics, and I've been going to them ever since. They checked out the first car for me, and right away they could tell that the car wasn't in the best shape, that it was kind of a little bit beat on. The owner of Precision told me that the car would definitely need an engine within a couple of months and probably only 5,000 miles driving. So that was the end of that. After that experience, I was a little bit discouraged just because this is my first time buying a decently expensive car. So I was a little bit discouraged by that, and I didn't look for a couple weeks, and then I started looking again, kind of just doing it daily on all those sites that I mentioned. Eventually I came across the car that I have now, and it was a very similar spec. It was space gray, it was manual, it has silver trim interior, it's sport package, very basic, no iDrive, but it has heated seats, stuff like that. So enough of the good features that you want, but not like over the top with iDrive and all that, because I don't really care too much about iDrive. And the owner of it was he was about 55, I'd say, so middle-aged guy, and he was a real estate finance guy, and he had an SUV, so he didn't drive this one much, and it had been garaged his whole life. And he was the second owner. The first owner was a BMW mechanic, so it was well taken care of there, and he only had it until 10,000 miles. The second owner bought the car at that mileage back in 2010, and he drove it until 66,000 miles or just underneath that, and then he decided to sell it. I think he put the price at around 11,000 initially, and he couldn't sell it, and then he lowered it a couple times until it was listed on Auto Trader for $9,250. So I clicked on it. The pictures of it were really pixelated, and there was only 2 pictures of the exterior. So it was also a stock car. So after my first experience with the car that was kind of modified and obviously a little bit beat on, I decided to go for a stock car just to start from a blank slate and kind of know that I don't have anything to worry about. So I found this car, and I did the pre-purchase inspection, and everything checked out like almost immediately. The owner of Precision Dynamics, Mike, checked out the car personally for me, and the moment he saw it, he said he knew it was the one because of one main thing, and it was the tires. But the tires that were on it were from 2010, so when the guy bought the car, they were the stock run flats. The tires still had a good amount of tread left on them. that was a pretty good sign that the guy had not driven it very hard at all, because it's like all the tires, especially the rear ones, were still in great shape, which is surprising for almost 8 or 9 years of driving. So that to me showed that the guy didn't beat on the car, and he really just babied it around town. It was kind of like his weekend car. And Precision went through a couple other checks to make sure that there wasn't any hidden leaks or, you know, compression issues. And of course the car checked out, because the guy took it to the dealer for everything. There was only one main problem that he had with the car, and it was one of the injectors failed. And of course he took it to the BMW dealer, and that was when the injectors were still under warranty. So he had one bank replaced. One bank is still pretty old, but they're still working. So I bought the car, and I paid $9,250. Most people say that's really cheap for these cars, and I definitely agree. But most people don't understand that I also looked for 6 months for a car. I didn't just settle on any car. I bought it stock. I've done plenty of stuff to it. It's almost full bolt-on. It just needs an intercooler and inlets. I've also done a BMW Performance exhaust. I've done the M-Tech front bumper. I've done a high kick spoiler from Mashimaro. And I've also done a couple other various little touches just to make it a little bit different. I wanted to give you guys a couple of things to go through and consider when you're looking for your next BMW. I guess this can apply to a lot of other BMW models, not necessarily just the 335i with the N54 engine. The first thing is to look through each listing. So even if it has a bad photo, even if the description is not very thorough and he doesn't list, the seller doesn't list every single maintenance item that they've done, you should still reach out to the owner and make sure that they weren't just lazy at the time of them writing the ad, because that's very possible. And I think that was the case with the owner that I found. He hadn't put much in the description, and the photos were terrible, but it turned out to be a great car that was never really abused. Sometimes the ones that have the worst listings are the best examples. Sounds kind of weird, but just make sure you look through every single one. Another thing that I recommend is make sure you get a PPI, or pre-purchase inspection. And one shop that I'd recommend, they're local to me in Orange County, California, is Precision Dynamics. They've done all the work on my car. They do great work, and they'll treat you like family every time you go there. So I'd recommend them to do your PPI. There's other shops though, and I'm sure many of you are going to be watching this are from different states and countries and stuff like that. Just find a shop that is reputable in your area. It's pretty easy to do. If you find N54 owners in your city, you can simply just DM them and ask, hey, what shop do you go to? What shop would you recommend? I have people all the time that ask me what shop I recommend. I always recommend Precision, because I believe that they are the best, price-wise and knowledge-wise. Another thing to consider is to look at every single website. So off the top of my head, I could list a few: Craigslist, Cars.com, AutoTrader, eBay, Facebook Marketplace. There's 5 right there, and there's plenty of other ones. Carfax is another good one. Things like Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace is where you're going to find all the private listings, or most of the private listings. So if you want to pay less, look for a private listing. I would never recommend wasting a seller's time. That's something really annoying to do. If you know you're going to be picky about a couple of the options that are on the car and tear the seller apart for a couple things, then I don't know if you should waste his or her time. When I found my car, I was very upfront and honest that I had the money ready to buy, and that if he was willing to drive the car down to do a pre-purchase inspection, then I would buy it right on the spot, and that's exactly what I did. So you just have to be honest with the seller. I sold my old Civic once I got this car, and it was a real pain to find a seller that actually followed through. That's a totally different car, since I was selling it for like $2,000. So you're dealing with a whole different range of people that will blow you off and try to scam you and stuff like that. But it goes a really long way for sellers if you're honest and you're upfront and you don't waste their time. So overall, it's not impossible to find a well taken care of 335i for under $10,000, but you have to understand that it's going to take a really long time. At least it did for me. You may get lucky and find one within a month or 2 months. There's no specific amount of time that you can really say it's going to take. You also have to be willing to search almost every day on all those websites, otherwise you might miss some of the listings that pop up. If you find a car that's not in great shape, I wouldn't recommend settling for it. I never did. I could have settled for a car that had a couple engine problems, and then I would have probably been in a really bad spot right now with a blown up engine and a whole list of other problems. If you're like me and you don't have the tools to work on your own car or the garage space, I live in an apartment, so it wasn't a thing for me. I have to take my car to a shop to get it worked on, or down to my friend's house in San Diego. So if you're like that, make sure you're gonna buy a car that is reliable and it had previous maintenance followed, at least the suggested maintenance by BMW. Otherwise, you're gonna be dealing with a lot of reliability issues like water pumps, oil leaks, high pressure fuel pumps, injectors, serpentine belts. There's a really long list of things to consider. But if you find a car like mine that was owned by an older guy that just drove it on weekends and really didn't put many miles on the car, then I'd say go for it after, of course, you do that initial inspection. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It was really interesting for me to reflect on the process that I went through to get my car. I hope this helps some of you. I know quite a lot of people on my Instagram follow me that are trying to get into a 335i, 135i, anything with the N54 engine, and they have a ton of questions, but I guarantee if you follow some of these steps, you'll find the right car. It's just a matter of time and being patient with it. If you haven't already, make sure you've liked this video and you subscribe to my channel. I'm trying to build my YouTube page to document my 335i and vlog other various things. So if you like my style videos, please consider doing both of those things. Make sure to comment down below if you have anything else to say about this video, and I'll see you in the next one.